Imagine looking at an ancient weathered map.
Oh, right, like the really old parchment ones?
Yeah, exactly. You're tracing the coastline, following the trade routes, and then suddenly the ink just
It
stalks.
completely blanks out.
Right. The parchment gives way to, like, drawings of giant sea monsters, crashing waves, and those famous ominous words, here be dragons.
Right. It's iconic.
It is. And for centuries, cartographers used that exact visual language to tell sailors one very specific thing, which is, this is the edge. Do not sail past this point.
Because the known world abruptly ends right there.
Exactly. And stepping beyond it is not just dangerous, it's unthinkable.
It's literally a cliff drop in the human imagination. I mean, we are deeply evolutionarily programmed to fear the edge of the map.
You really are.
We want to know exactly where the boundary is so we can safely stay inside it.
Right. We crave that definitive line. But today, we're looking at a piece of source material that proves the edge of the map is, well, it's an illusion.
A total fabrication.
Yeah. And not only is it an illusion, but that exact terrifying edge is precisely where you are supposed to start sailing.
Which completely upends our, geographical and psychological understanding of boundaries.
It really does. Now, if you are listening to this, you might want to brace yourself because the text we are exploring today is uniquely concentrated.
Highly concentrated.
Yeah. We are taking a deep dive into an excerpt from a work titled The Genesis of Failure. And when I say excerpt, I mean we are looking at exactly 12 words.
Just what?
Just two incredibly brief sentences. And they read, "Failure is not the end, it's the beginning of success."
It's the whole thing.
That is it. Now, on the surface, you might be thinking, great, 12 words. Sounds like a cheesy motivational poster I'd see in a corporate break room.
Like a cat hanging from a branch.
Exactly. Hang in there. But bear with us, because the architecture of this quote is actually incredibly rigid, and the philosophical paradigm shift contained within it it's massive. Okay, let's unpack this. I like to think of this text as a single tiny seed.
Okay, a seed.
Yeah, like it's microscopic on the outside, but it contains the entire complex blueprint for a massive tree. And our goal today is to, water that seed and see what grows from it.
I love that analogy. And I'm glad you brought up the motivational poster trap, because that's the real danger with a text this brief.
The tendency to dismiss it.
Exactly. The author has stripped away all the filler, all the caveats, and all the conversational fluff. Every single syllable here is load-bearing.
Load-bearing. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so if we just read it as a platitude, we completely miss the actual mechanics of what it's doing.
Totally. So let's ignore the poster and look at the actual mechanics of the very first clause. The text reads, "Failure is not the end." Just 5 words.
5 very intentional words.
Right. But before this text can even begin to redefine what failure actually is, it has to explicitly dismantle what we falsely assume it to be.
It's a direct assault on our default cognitive programming.
Do I mean?
Well, think about why the author felt compelled to write those specific words. The text wouldn't need to explicitly state, failure is not the end, unless our natural automatic human reflex is to believe that it is a terminal point.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The text is immediately attacking our illusion of finality. It recognizes that when we experience failure, our immediate psychological response is to view it as like a period at the end of a sentence.
A full stop.
Exactly. A full stop, the closing of a door.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though, as a proxy for the listener.
These do.
Because dismantling that finality sounds great in theory, but what if it feels like the end?
Right, the emotional weight of it.
Yeah, like if I completely blow a major client pitch at work, or if a business I poured my life savings into just goes bankrupt, I'm not sitting there thinking, wow, the map just expanded.
No, of course not.
I'm thinking, I hit a brick wall, the road is over, I fell off the cliff. Isn't the author just offering us, semantic comfort food to make us feel better about losing?
That's the friction, isn't it? The emotional reality versus the structural reality.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how the text forces you, the listener, to completely erase a definitive boundary line that you have drawn in your own mind, regardless of how you feel about it.
So my feelings don't dictate the geography.
Exactly. It demands a cognitive rewrite. Just look closely at the grammar. By using the definitive, the author isn't offering a comforting suggestion.
It's not a gentle pat on the back.
No, not at all. The text doesn't say failure shouldn't be the end, or, try really hard not to let failure be the end. It states it as an immutable law of physics.
Like gravity.
Yes. Gravity exists, and failure is not the end. It's telling you that your perception of that brick wall is factually incorrect.
So even if I'm sitting in the rubble of that blown pitch, feeling like it's a full stop, the text is essentially tapping on the glass saying, your feelings are valid, but your coordinates are wrong. You aren't at an ending.
Precisely. It entirely separates the emotional devastation of a setback from the mechanical reality of the timeline. The text functionally revokes your permission to view failure as a resting place. You are, you are not allowed to stop there.
But if failure isn't a wall, if it's just a doorway or like a forced redirection, that completely changes what we are walking into.
It changes everything.
Which leads me to a structural question. If the text insists with absolute grammatical authority that failure isn't the end, what is the actual end?
That is the big question.
Does an end even exist in this framework? Because if I hit a point that I label failure and the text tells me, nope, the road continues, I have to wonder if the map ever actually stops.
By entirely negating the concept of the end in the context of failure, the text opens up this terrifying yet incredibly liberating infinite space.
Infinite space.
Yeah. If failure isn't the end, then the concept of a final static end might be entirely obsolete in this paradigm. It traps you in a state of mandatory continuation.
Mandatory continuation. Okay, so we've dismantled the end. We've shattered the period at the end of the sentence.
Right.
But sitting in this infinite space where there are no endings is, it's a little unmooring.
It's definitely disorienting.
To really ground ourselves in how this actually works, we have to look at the title of the work this excerpt is pulled from, which is The Genesis of Failure.
Which is such a powerful title.
It really is. And this is where we move from the rejection of an end to a really deep exploration of origins. Because, going back to our cartography metaphor, you can't fully understand where a new road leads until you understand the exact coordinates of where it started.
You need a starting point.
Yeah, you have to locate the you are here star on the map.
And the title provides the cardinal directions for the rest of the text. Let's really look at that word genesis.
Okay.
It means origin. It means formation. It means the specific mode of creation of something.
Wait, let me stop you there, because the phrase genesis of failure sounds almost counterintuitive.
How so?
Well, usually we think of failure as an accident, a mistake, something we passively tripped over.
Right, an oops moment.
Yeah, but genesis implies we are actively building it. Are we intentionally creating failure?
That is the brilliant tension the author introduces. Failure isn't a passive accident in this framework. It is a produced state.
A produced state.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, understanding how failure is generated, its genesis is intimately, inextricably tied to understanding what failure subsequently produces.
Okay, I think I'm tracking.
Think of it as data acquisition. When you fail, you aren't just creating a mess. You are generating highly specific, incredibly valuable raw material.
Oh, like mapping the dragons.
Exactly. You attempted a route, you hit a dragon on the map, and now you have new definitive data about where not to sail. The title implies that effort and energy went into creating the failure. You had to try something to fail at it.
I see. So it's aggressive data collection.
Precise.
The failure isn't a void. It's a physical substance you just mined from your experience. You took an action, and the reaction was a failure. But now you hold that failure in your hands as raw data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It completely neutralizes the moral judgment we constantly place on ourselves.
We do judge ourselves so harshly.
We treat failure like a sin or a character flaw. But by viewing it through the lens of Genesis, failure becomes a mechanical, necessary step in a much larger sequence of creation.
A step in the sequence.
Right. You generated an outcome. It wasn't the outcome you wanted, but it is an outcome nonetheless.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The title is looking backward, asking, how did we build this failure? What data did we gather?
Yes.
But the text itself is looking forward. It uses that failure, that acquired data, as the raw material to build the next thing.
It's the pivot point.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of the second sentence. The text doesn't just leave us hanging in the void with a bunch of raw data.
No, it gives us direction.
It fills in the blank space on the map. It says, it's the beginning of success.
The resolution to the tension.
Yeah. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because building directly on the idea that the timeline continues past the point of failure, the text now defines exactly what that continuation looks like.
And it does so very firmly.
But again, I want to push back on this because it sounds a little too perfectly wrapped in a bow.
Fair enough.
How does being completely broke or having a project completely collapse literally become the beginning of success? How is it not just a disaster?
To understand that, we have to look very closely at the definitive, absolute nature of the phrasing here. It's the beginning.
Okay.
The text does not say failure might lead to success. It doesn't say failure could be a stepping stone toward success if you have a good attitude.
Right, there are no qualifiers.
None. It doesn't offer a probability or a percentage chance. It creates a direct, mathematically inarguable equation.
It's a literal equal sign.
It is an equal sign. Failure equals the start of success. The state of failure is perfectly synonymous with the state of beginning success.
So they are the exact same thing.
The text merges the two concepts so tightly that you cannot separate them. In this grammatical structure, you cannot be in a state of failure without simultaneously, by definition, being at the absolute beginning of success.
But how does that actually work in practice?
Let's break it down.
If I go back to my example, if I completely bomb a pitch to a massive client, I walk out of that boardroom, I don't have the account, and my boss is furious.
A painful moment.
Very. How is that moment, that exact painful moment, the beginning of success?
Because of the raw material you just generated in the Genesis phase. Before you walked into that room, your success was entirely theoretical.
It was just a guess.
Exactly. You had a guess about what the client wanted. By bombing the pitch, you acquired hard, undeniable data about what they actually want or what specifically doesn't work.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If success is a house you're trying to build, you cannot build it out of thin air. You need bricks.
And the bricks are the failures?
Where do you get the bricks? You get them from the rubble of your failures. The failed pitch provided the exact objections you need to overcome to win the next pitch.
Right.
Therefore, the failure isn't just a sad event that happened before you eventually succeeded. The failure actively provided the material for the success.
Ah. So you literally cannot construct the success without the material provided by the failure.
That's the core of it.
That is a massive shift because usually when we think of the beginning of success, we picture something purely positive.
Like a light bulb going off.
Exactly. We picture the moment the brilliant idea strikes or, landing our first small client. But the text is forcing us to look at the rubble, the broken pieces, the moment of absolute defeat. And it is pointing directly at that mess and saying, look, that is the actual starting line.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally measure our own progress.
How so?
If the lowest point of the valley is technically the first step up the next mountain, then our entire metric for assessing where we are on our journey is inverted.
Oh, that's wild.
The text is telling you that the moment you feel furthest from success, the exact moment you feel like you have ruined everything, is actually the exact moment you have officially stepped onto the runway of success.
Because you finally have the bricks.
Yes, you have the data, you have the raw material, now you begin.
I want to really dig into the implications of that equation, though.
Let's do it.
Because if the equation is that rigid, if A truly equals B, and failure is the beginning of success, it makes me wonder about the inverse.
Okay, see where you're going.
Structurally, the text positions failure as the absolute prerequisite starting line. Does this text imply that success is actually impossible to achieve without that initial point of failure triggering it? Can't I just, get it right the first time?
That is the natural, logical conclusion of the text's internal architecture, and it's a fantastic point to explore.
Right.
If failure is the defined beginning of success, then a success that arrives without a preceding failure is almost philosophically impossible within the boundaries of these 12 words.
So getting it right the first time doesn't count.
If you just get it right the first time, without any friction or failure, the text would argue that isn't true success. That's just luck.
A happy accident.
Exactly. It's a happy accident because it wasn't built on a foundation of acquired data. It wasn't earned through the genesis of understanding what doesn't work.
So true success, like deep, replicable success, requires the data that only failure can provide.
Exactly. By the text's own uncompromising logic, attempting to achieve success without experiencing failure would be like trying to navigate a ship across the ocean without ever mapping the reefs.
You're just sailing blind.
Right. You might make it across once by pure luck, but you don't actually know how to sail the route.
Because you didn't hit any dragons to map them out.
Precisely. The failure isn't just an unfortunate detour on the way to success. It is the required doorway. You must pass through the genesis of failure to acquire the map that allows you to arrive at success.
It makes the failure mandatory, which, strangely, takes all the sting out of it.
It really does.
Instead of an accident or a reflection of my self-worth, it becomes a necessary procedural step, like paying a toll on a highway.
A toll booth. I like that.
Yeah, like you don't sit in your car and weep when you hand over the money at the toll booth. You might be annoyed you have to pay it, but you just hand over the coin because you know it's the only mechanical way the gate opens so you can keep driving.
I love that phrasing, a necessary procedural step. The text transforms a moment of intense emotional devastation into a purely transactional moment of progression.
Transactional. Yeah.
You have paid the toll of failure.
Yeah.
You have acquired the necessary data. Therefore, the gate of success is now mechanically open to you. The emotional weight is removed entirely.
So what does this all mean? We've taken these 12 tiny words, this brief little blurb, and we've watched them unfold into a massive, rigorously logical framework for how to navigate human endeavor.
It's incredibly dense.
It is. We started by dismantling the finality of failure. We looked at that brick wall, we looked at the terrifying edge of the map where the sea monsters are drawn, and we realized it was an illusion.
Completely fake.
We accepted the text's grammatical law that failure is not an end. The road simply continues.
We erased the period at the end of the sentence and replaced it with a comma.
Exactly, a comma. Then we moved into the concept of its genesis. We pushed back on the idea that failure is just a passive, embarrassing accident and realized that it is an active process of data acquisition.
Right. The creation of failure is intimately tied to the creation of the next phase.
You are mining the raw material you need.
We neutralize the moral judgment of the setback by viewing it as a mechanical necessity.
And finally, we arrived at that mathematically rigid equation. Failure equals the beginning of success.
The literal equal sign.
Yeah. We redefine failure not just as a bumpy part of the journey, but as the literal mandatory starting block. You cannot build the house of success without the bricks of failure. It is the toll booth that must be passed through.
And for you, the listener, the ultimate value of a deep dive like this isn't just an abstract philosophical exercise.
No, not at all.
It's about how you use this highly practical, incredibly powerful tool tomorrow morning.
Right. In your everyday life.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
challenge is to carry this exact framing into your daily life. The next time you hit what feels like a definitive end, this time you bomb the pitch, or a relationship ends, or you hit what feels like a solid brick wall in your personal goals. Remember the ironclad promise of this text.
That the wall is an illusion.
Yes. The failure is not an endpoint. It is your mandatory starting line. You just gathered the data. Now you begin.
It gives you complete permission to immediately pivot your mindset the second the failure happens.
Instantaneously.
You don't have to spend weeks wallowing in the ending because the text mathematically guarantees you that there is no ending.
It demands that you immediately look at the rubble and ask, okay, what bricks do I have here to start building?
Precisely. But as we wrap up this deep dive, sitting with all this profound logic, there is one final thought that this text leaves me wrestling with.
Oh, what's that?
A thought strictly built on the absolute mathematical equation we just unpacked. And it's something I want to leave you, the listener, to mull over on your own as you step back out into your day.
Leave them with a question.
Yeah. If we fully accept the text's absolute guarantee, if failure is truly the mandatory beginning of success, then what exactly does the middle of success look like?
That's a fascinating thought.
Right. If we can only ever identify our starting lines by the painful failures that trigger them, is the journey of success just a continuous, ongoing process of navigating the space between these failures?
Bouncing from one genesis to the next.
Exactly. When you reach the edge of that old, ancient map and you realize the border was an illusion and you have to keep sailing, what kind of waters are you actually navigating when every single failure is just another beginning? Keep sailing, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.